But I've come to realize over time that my mother was very mentally ill. You know, she didn't wake up in the morning and be like, okay, my to-do list, ruin my kids' lives. What should I do? She was not well. And I can even have appreciation now that she was doing the best she knew how to do, you know? And so I think that, you know, that history in me, and then wanting to write three-dimensional characters, you don't want to write somebody that's, you know, tweaking their mustache when they do something evil. Going back to Would You Kill for Me, my other Lifetime movie that Melissa Joan Hart was in, one of the three perspectives that showed what happened was from the mother's point of view. And the mother was detestable, just truly, truly, truly detestable. But in her version, she was doing the best she could. And, you know, this woman that was set in the 80s at the edge of the Appalachian Mountains. And, you know, in her desperation, having been so abused and sexually, physically, all these things, that her last gasp at life was to try and convince her daughter to kill the mother's abuser. So when you put the compassion into it, it doesn't mean that you have to accept, or even, you know, that you're on board with, or that sort of thing. But when you be like, oh, I get it. She's going about it all wrong, but I get it. I'd like to think that makes things more interesting to watch, and especially gives actors a lot more to bite into.
I would think so too. I mean, and Lisa has even done I agree with all of that. And Lisa has even done an interview where she said she probably wouldn't have and I'm kind of paraphrasing, but not really because I have notes here, but that she wouldn't have the same understanding of playing someone like Madeline if she hadn't worked with sociopathic and narcissistic people on the Housewives for 8 years. And she's saying, like, that's the truth. Like, it's no shade, like that she truly has an understanding of this character because of Housewives. And she's thankful to RHOBH because it helped with this performance.
Yeah, I mean, she's so not bitter. I mean, we had a long talk about Housewives once, and she's very accepting. She's very direct when she talks about her experience there, and she's very grateful for it. You know, it's kept her in the limelight. It kept her working. Um, you know, this business, show business, attracts a lot of narcissists, and I've dated a few. And, you know, when they're shining their light on you, it's all great and wonderful. But when they don't text you back after the first date, it's rough. But enough about me. Back to Lisa.
Well,
You
you
know,
ended up married with a husband, so you're doing something better than I am.
yeah, I made all the wrong. We'll talk after the show. I made all the wrong choices
Yes.
so that I could make the right one. But I celebrate my crazy past. I do. But anyway, so, you know, sort of in the same way that Lisa does. Let's pull it back here, Greg. In that she does appreciate that, you know, these women are so driven, in some cases, that they're going to do anything to get their goal, whether it's more camera time, whether get signed another season, you know, no matter what it's going to do. And so that certainly is Madeline, right? She, the character in Mommy Meanest, she's going to do anything to keep her daughter close to her, even if it is inching her closer and closer to possibly the daughter harming herself. But in Madeline's eyes, the end goal is worth it, no matter what she has to do. And of course, you know, you've seen the movie, and for others who've seen the movie, they know that, you know, she keeps upping the stakes until, you know, things reach a really tough moment.
Yeah, until things reach a really tough moment. Did you have an actress in mind when you wrote this? Like
You
when,
know,
or yeah, and when you write parts in general?
that's such a great question. I usually do cast my movies. For example, when I was writing Heavenly Christmas, there was a role named Pearl, and it was, you know, this kind of sassy angel, which aren't we all? And Shirley MacLaine got cast in it, which I never would have imagined in a million years. And she's amazing as well, by the way. So present, so giving, so generous. I just love her. And and she would always talk about the script, which was also very generous. And she would say in interviews, well, I could feel like this role was written for me. And I actually, when I was writing the role, was picturing Megan Mullally. Am I saying that name right? Karen
Yeah.
from Will and Grace. So yes, so I often do cast in my head because it just helps add some flavor to it. And of course, I'll bring in some originality toward the end of the script, but especially in the first pages of the script, it kind of helps me to cast somebody. In Madeline's case, I did not. I did not. I'd done some research on a few different women who have cyberbullied their children or stalked. And so I kind of was reading up on, the psychosis of it, Munchausen by proxy, that sort of thing. But I really kind of had a generic character in mind from the beginning. And so it was great to see Lisa play her. Another thing about Lisa too is she's so gorgeous and sexy and fit. And she just, I'm like, wow. They put those pants on her and those pants look great. She's just and I love that. I think that's so great for the role that and she recently did the, cover of Cosmopolitan at 60. And I love that she owns her age. I love that she owns her sexuality. And I love that in Mommy Meanest, we have this, very attractive, sexy character who is just flailing. So it's you have a little bit of the aspirational, but you also have that train wreck thing that I mentioned earlier.
What about, cyberbullying? Because, being on the Housewives, I mean, anyone in the public eye is, has the trolls and the haters, but, like it does get to a certain place on Housewives that's pretty intense. And, certainly in Lisa's last season, there was a lot of like cyberbullying. I think she even said she got death threats at one point. Like, was that something you guys talked about? Because I mean, she was the victim of it herself from being on Housewives. I mean, there's a lot of people that are not fans because of the whole Housewives experience.
Yeah, it's true. I encourage them to still watch the movie because I think you might be surprised by her performance. But yes, and I think that's what initially frightened her about the role. Like she didn't just instantly sign on; she had to read the script, and she said in interviews that it was something that scared her, both because she has daughters and could never imagine doing something like that, but also because she's been on the other end of it, and death threats would be terrifying, right? I know it just, if somebody, says something that I misinterpret even on text, right, it can shut you down for a day. So to be living in the public eye and to have that kind of hate thrown at you by, people you work with, people you don't work with, or even strangers, people who think they know you, and that's just really frightening. And I just really applaud her and other people's stamina who deal with that. And so many people do, right? Because you could really let it just make you, okay, I'm going to go under a rock now. I'm just not going to come out. I'm not going to do my art. I'm not going to be in the public eye. But instead, you're strong. And of course, that gives the rest of us something to model ourselves after. And I'll even say, like, again, I didn't watch Housewives religiously, but let's say that maybe some of her behavior was a little shady. So some of my behavior is a little bit of shady, right? Again, we kind of get this thing like somebody's got to be perfect all the time, or they have to do things the way we would do them, or the way that we feel like they should be done. Like, okay, so somebody made a mistake. That's all right. You know what I mean? Like parents make mistakes with kids